distance in the light, vibration of a thundercloud.
Hello, loved ones. This is Matt Stevens, and this is the My Sober Addiction podcast. And we are happy, healthy, wealthy, loved, and free. And I am joined again by Clive and Dom. Anyway, today we've been talking a lot about how the world is a crazy place, and there's a lot going on. We don't have to get into the topics of what everybody knows what's going on all around the world. It's just seems to keep getting worse. Now, my personal belief is that there is going to be a breaking point. There is the straw that broke the camel's back. At some point, there will be some kind of breaking point. However, in the meantime, it's just crazier and crazier. But the thing is, we become aware of that, and then we do not want to allow that to drag us down with it, because that does us no good. It does nobody any good. We can't be effective at helping as far as affecting change in the world or around us if we are dragged down with it. So that's what we've been talking about. And of course, Clive always has some good insights. And what do you say? What say you there, Clive?
Well, I've been caught up again with the troubles of the world and the chaos of the world. And I was actually at a festival the other week, and the guy, he was two Sikh brothers in this band, and they were just saying, yeah, it's a crazy world. But they said, don't let that stop you being you and being wonderful within that world and spreading it around. And that really resonated with me. There's a guy from the band called Kismet, and he said that he would be happy to do a podcast as well. So this would be good. But one of the things I was just looking at now is that, our brains are wired to notice threats 5 times more than positivity. And I think, the papers and the media, they know this, and I think they play on it. They can hijack our attention. They can hijack our fears and anxieties. And in a way, that does control us a bit. If we were all kind of happy and confident and just getting on with what we could be getting on with, I think we lead better lives. But when we're in fear and we're in doubt, I think we're more likely to have addictive behaviors, to have soothing behaviors such as comfort eating or drinking or smoking or gambling or watching TV. And, once we kind of retune our brain a bit, if there is a way to kind of reset and break the spell on those fears and anxieties, then I think, we can live slightly, we can jump realities. We jump out of that fearful world and we move into a world that we just create, because we're creating this world the whole time the way we see it. And I think that's an amazing thing. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I'm playing with creating my own stories and, not trying to get dragged into the narrative that's being fed me, even though I'm aware that it is actually real. A lot of what's going on, the wars and the injustice, it's there, but it's accepting the bits that I can't change and working out that I don't have to feel miserable about it, I think.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And actually, it's kind of synchronistic. Yeah, synchronistic that you had that, I guess, experience at that festival, because, like I said, it's kind of what's been on my mind lately. And yeah, and then you said that happened, and then of course, like, we're all in 3 different locations in the world, right? And we don't have to get on here to talk about it. We already know what's going on, but Dom, what you've had some ideas as well as far as how to, not necessarily to block it out. I mean, as Clive mentioned earlier, the whole being blissfully unaware, but by being blissfully unaware, you're also not effective at helping when you're able, right? So anyway, what say you, Dom?
Yeah, you reminded me of the Serenity Prayer, which is something they repeat at AA, isn't it? Is God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That is, it's very very good.
But that reminded me of the start of AA was a bit more confusing than a lot of people realise. Because it started off with someone going to meet with Carl Jung to help them with their addiction. Carl Jung in the beginning wasn't very interested in I think because he didn't think he could make a huge difference. And then he accepted the challenge, and I think that was very, very important. But there was another person who hopped in soon afterwards, who I think had quite a big impact that people don't realise, was David Rockefeller. And I think perhaps what amazes me about things like AA is a very secretive movement. And I suppose that's one thing, isn't it? It's good to share. I think the Serenity Prayer is wonderful. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom in that. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in having people around us and community and be open about things.
Yeah.
And I think one of the issues with AA is often that's not the case. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've had my experience with AA, and I guess anybody who's listened to my podcast knows that I don't want to say I'm not their biggest fan, because listen, I understand that AA has saved a lot of lives. They've saved a lot of relationships. They've done a lot of good. They've done a lot of good. However, I think it was just my personal experience with individuals that just kind of put me off a little bit with them. But I do recognize the fact that they're a fantastic organization as far as like saving lives and relationships.
A very good friend of mine, she's been going to AA and she's like 180 days clean now. And initially she hated it. She was just like, oh my God, in certain groups, certain people, certain rules. And now she loves it. She's like, oh my God, this is like the best thing ever. It's like, and it's lovely to hear those success stories. And I think, part of it is the people you meet, and you can be lucky or unlucky. You meet up with the right sponsor, you meet the right people there, you get that sense of community, you have the right conversations, you fight the rules. I mean, she's not someone who agrees with rules and goes along with them. She likes to fight them and do the opposite. And yet she's found her place within AA doing that. And she's kind of enjoying and gaining a lot from it spiritually as well. So again, the way we approach stuff, there's a little bit of luck in, what we experience, but we also generate our own luck, I think, to some extent. And, if we're curious about, why something isn't working, maybe we start asking the right questions, and then we generate new realities as new things start to happen as a result of asking those questions, and new thoughts form. I just really found, I think I spent the first 50 years of my life very much on a very similar way of thinking all the time. And I think it's only recently I've managed to shift that way of thinking. And at that point, it has enabled me to break the spell on things like, the media injustice and even the addictions that I've faced in the past, like habitual drinking and various other things that I'm not going to go into. But, it just that change in thinking. How do we change our thinking? And I say we're naturally hardwired for negative thinking and to spot threats and to spot problems. And I used to think that problem spotting was like a really good power. Like that was, my true power was to be able to spot problems before they happened. And it's not. It's a misery. It's steals your joy and future, and it makes you no fun at parties,
Right. Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you're going to be the guy that points out how everything's going to suck in about an hour or whatever.
that has been me quite a lot. I was good.
Nobody wants you at the party.
I was good at it. But the problem is we do it to ourselves as well. We're having our own party with ourselves continuously. So we might as well make it a good one, huh?
Right.
We weren't taught to do that, though, weren't we? I remember having a conversation with a teacher at school about why we were digging into Shakespeare so much. And I just said, why can't we just enjoy it? Why can't we just read this stuff and enjoy it for what it is?
Enjoyment is not on the curriculum, Mr. Reed.
Yeah. And I mentioned that because there was a friend of mine who sent me a meme recently, and it was just one of those friendly, it was, kids wouldn't believe if you showed them what we were listening to in our day. And it was this really raunchy song that someone was singing. And I sent a reply saying, because this friend of mine is a pilot, and I sent a reply saying, I can see that you're away from your missus. I know what you're missing. And he kind of replied saying, it wasn't about, I just sent you this because it was basically saying the kids will be amazed if we show them what kind of saucy rock and roll we were listening to. And I'd just gone into I'd gone under the surface. I wasn't going to see it just as being a friendly meme that someone was sending to me. I was looking at the psychology of my friend sitting in his on his own, just basically wanting to spank the missus. I should be saying things like that on your podcast, should I?
So this is it. I mean,
it's all good. It's fine. That's the beautiful thing about podcasts. You can go anywhere.
But overthinking, if we overthink stuff, we're just wasting energy, aren't we? You know, we're not doing anything with it. We're just creating this soup of possibilities, and we're not actually living in any of those possibilities. We're just analyzing potential outcomes, possibly to safeguard ourselves and protect us against the unknown, maybe. But again, sorry, Don.
But it's family as well, isn't it? I mean, my relationship, my daughter's kind of suffering a little bit at the moment. I think because I was trying to be too protective. And that's one thing about kids. They want to live their life and they want to be able to make mistakes and say, look, I'll mess it up. But, I don't want you to dig down and find out all the rot that's happening. And I was a bit too digging dad.
Right. Trying to protect. I mean, I've got a 21-year-old, and it's kind of hard to just let them go. It is. But I mean, that's not necessarily it may not necessarily be what you were trying to say, but it just made me think of that because recently we were on vacation and that came up, her being a 21-year-old, wanting to go and party and stuff. And I'm like, there's crazy people out there. And it's like, at some point, I guess you got to trust that you did good enough. And she, because you can't stop her. I mean, legally, you can't stop her. I mean, she is an adult. So
exactly. Yeah.
But again,
sometimes people do need protecting, though, and that's the balance to try and that's where the wisdom is, isn't it? The wisdom is that's where the serenity prayer comes back.
And again,
absolutely,
is choosing which battles you're going to fight. I mean, with my son who's 18, he's wanted to do certain things, and we've kind of gone, well, that's not really what we'd want for you, kind of thing. We don't want him taking steroids and stuff. And again, we sort of said, well, we're not going to stop you because we can't. That's the bottom line. We accept that. However, we do think there's better ways. And eventually we waited it out and it stopped. It just had a natural kind of cycle. And I think this idea, I think you've talked about cycles, Dom, and I think cycles are really important in a lot of different areas of our life, but we can control those cycles. We can say the cycle stops here. I've made my point of it known and I don't need to waste more energy on it. I've put my boundary in. It's a fair one. I'm happy with it. I will reflect if it needs to change and adjust, but I don't need to stay awake at night worrying about it. And I know a lot of people, especially, a lot of people who suffer from addictions, they have trouble going to sleep at night because they've got so much racing around their head that's unresolved. And that's why, therapy can be useful. But again, good friends, good conversations, and good conversations with yourself that enable you to unpack those ideas that you haven't resolved or found a kind of a satisfactory resting place for. And I think, that's why I took a suitcase full of bricks down to London when I was given a talk about unresolved baggage. And I took 40 kilograms of bricks down to London on the train. And I unpacked them in this speech that I was doing. I tipped them over the floor and I said, these are unresolved problems. I brought them with me. They feel important. I can't quite tell you why I've brought them with me, though. And it's like, but they are important. I've bought them for a reason. And really what I should have done is really kind of work out what that reason was, write it down on some Post-it notes and bring that down instead. I don't need to be carrying this weight around with me anymore.
The metaphorical brick.
Yeah, I think there's some people. I mean, I remember when we were in Reading, Dom, and someone suggested a T-shirt with someone carrying two big suitcases, and written on their T-shirt is emotional baggage handler. And I like this idea that, we can be just carrying this emotional baggage around our entire lives. And it could be based around, not forgiving someone, for example. And again, forgiveness is a really big one. It's like, how do you forgive someone who's done something terrible? And the answer may be that you forgive, but you don't accept that it was right, and you put your boundaries down to make sure it doesn't happen again. Forgiveness doesn't have to be about totally going, oh, well, that's fine, just do it again whenever. That's not the point of forgiveness. Forgiveness is accepting that's where they were, that's what they chose to do, and it's not going to burn you up anymore.
Okay, you had mentioned the emotional baggage handler, right? And all that. And then the suitcase full of bricks. I think that's a beautiful way of putting things. However, this does very much tie into what we are talking about with the awareness of what's going on in your personal field. Because most people pack that stuff around. They pack those old emotions, those old feelings, all that old stuff that they probably should have either resolved or just let go of at some point in the history, but they don't even realize they're still packing it. It's just become part of their background noise, maybe, but once we bring those things into our awareness, then we can deal with it and say, yeah, that's dragging me down, and start peeling that stuff away, dumping off those bricks and getting lighter.
Yeah. We were talking about this earlier, weren't we, Clive? Really, with the notion of reality. I know we're digging a bit deep here, but the very notion of what we carry around, that's and if you could look at it, I won't go into this because it will be a bit of a tunnel. That the very nature of our being is full of things that are, in a way, they're myths. The whole idea that we have to carry this kind of meat bucket around that is ourselves, and how useful it is, and what it can do, what it can't do. If it doesn't do certain things, then we're going to be upset about it. We want to take it places. We've got bucket lists now and stuff like that, where our meat bucket goes. That's what they should be called. Maybe we should have a whole new language for it. The meat bucket list.
The meat bucket list.
I'm going to take this bunch of lard that
things are more complicated when you're made of meat.
and the very notion that we're living in this thing in the first place is that well, maybe we don't need to do that, Yeah, but there we go. And actually, the reason the person I arranged to meet, because I mentioned earlier that I'm going to meet someone, is someone who's having a bit of a crisis at the moment, and actually, the one thing that we were talking about is I was actually talking about him earlier because his wife just basically has walked out on him and kicked him out of where he lives. And he was talking about how he's avoiding drinking because he knows that that's going to be a bit of a tunnel that he goes down that he probably won't come out of, which is quite true. But it did make me think earlier of how do I explain to him that perhaps there are things that are experiencing or people are experiencing things that are a bit worse. And then I thought, well, I'm not too sure if I can. It's pretty dire situation.
We could take the view that, negative thinking actually shrinks, kind of like your view of what is possible. And actually positivity, not toxic positivity, but possibility enables you to be more hopeful, and it broadens out where you might go next. I mean, if you only see certain doors to walk through, like being chucked out of a house and ending up on the street, then that's what your reality is probably going to become, because you can't see any other steps to take to go in another direction. If you can see a beautiful, like new house on the horizon and a potential new partner, and this, you could be quite excited about your partner fucking off, and I just think, how do we wire our brains to positivity? And I think a lot of it comes from past experience. When something bad happens, that's it, we're screwed. But actually, the Stoics were very keen on imagining the worst possible outcome and then making good of it. And that's a really great exercise to do.
Oh, I never heard of that one.
That's so, for example, your house burns down, but then you go out and you live on the streets and you find spirituality. It's just, you picture the worst happening, and that makes you grateful, one, for what you've got. And it also directs you to think of more of which directions you'd like to go in, but also what you would do were you were challenged with everything being taken away.
Wow. What do you think of that, Matt?
I think that's pretty deep. I mean, it would certainly change your perspective. I mean, it would make you realize, well, I mean, if you think you got it bad now, it could certainly be worse.
For example, I mean, if I was diagnosed with cancer, would I maybe take up wingsuit flying? That could be a kick. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, if you were, if you had like a certain amount of time to live and you were fairly certain that was accurate, why not? Right? I mean, that'd be a better way to go anyway.
That's exactly what we're doing. We're living this life. This life. Apparently, we have a certain amount of time left. I think in a way we live life the wrong way around.
Right.
It's like we should start life healthy and then get more and more crazy as we get older until we're doing crystal meth at the age of 90, jumping out of aircraft.
There we go. You've got your new coaching program, Dom. That's it. Your crystal meth at 90.
Well, go find some 90-year-olds and be like, hey, wouldn't you rather go this way?
Well, we're getting back to my friend whose wife has left him. I mean, he's 82 years of age. He's not very good. He doesn't feel very hopeful about the future.
Oh man, fill him with joy and hope and possibility. Then
that's exactly why I'm going to go and meet him at 5 o'clock. Yeah,
but not toxic. But not toxic possibilities. Actual possible possibilities, and actually the reality. I mean, like that Kerwin Ray video, which I think is invaluable. There's no point arguing with reality because it's bloody reality. You can spend the next 20 years of your life ruining your reality, but it's your reality. So why not embrace it? Love it.
This is brilliant. So we're actually now. It's 5 o'clock, so I've got to go and see Jack, and this is perfect because we've had a conversation about how I can go and cheer Jack up, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to go and.
I think you should.
Phil Jack joy.
I'm so glad you spent as much time with us as you could, though, Dom.
Yeah.
Thank
it's always
you.
lovely to see you, Matt, and I'll see you soon, Clive. We'll chat later.
Take care. We'll catch you later. Good luck with Jack.
Yes, very good. Good luck.
So then, Matt, it's just the two standing now. So,
oh man, what are we going to do now?
Well, I like this idea that negativity closes the door to creativity. And I do think that, the media machine wants us to be negative and fearful. I mean, I watched a very convincing South Park Bowling for Columbine skit, and it's about how America is run on fear. It seemed to make a lot of sense. And I know that I've spent 50 years of my life being quite fearful. And then we've got talks of World War III and this, that, and the other going on. And I've decided now to go, I don't care.
Yeah.
If they're going to come, they're going to come. I'm going to get on with my stuff because I've actually spent 30 years wasting energy worrying about that stuff, and it did nothing good for me whatsoever. It probably led me into a lot of addictions, a lot of misery, and a lot of negative thinking, and it probably stifled my creativity and who I could be in this very moment. So
yeah, well, and it's like I know that you and Dom probably get tired of hearing me talk about the word, mentioning the word awareness, because and as I say all the time, once you bring something into your awareness, but my point is, when I say those things, it's like that's when you can deal with it and you can face it then, and then you can decide, is this something I want to deal with or not? And as it relates to addiction, that is the ultimate blissfully unaware. That's something that we absolutely did not want to face. We denied it clearly we not denied it to everyone around us, but we denied it to ourselves. It's like if we had to, it's like take, for example, as I mentioned in the solo podcast I just put out, I said, the drug test, one of the things we hate about a drug test is that makes us look in a mirror, right? Because most people, when they're in active addiction and they take a drug test and then they look at that result and it says you are positive for opioids or whatever, it's like, damn, I am. And you really have to face that. Now it's fully in your face. It's fully in your awareness. And up until that point, you were just kind of blocking it out. And, as long as I don't see it, it's not real. It's like, yes, it is. It's very much real. It's just not. It's just that you are choosing to not look at it. But when you become aware of things, that's when you can then deal with it. So that's kind of where I'm like I said, I know you guys might be getting tired of hearing me mention awareness, but that's what I mean when I say those things. And
this awareness can become overwhelming. And I think, some people are highly attuned and aware and highly empathetic. And actually, some of those people are the most beautiful people you meet, but they have the hardest lives. And I think, it's finding that balance. And I think of the people that I know who are happy and grounded, and there is a reasonable amount of them, but I think, this is a good thing to do, is actually check around in your family and your friends and see, kind of just do a rough audit of who's around you at the moment, whether you've got happy, grounded people, whether you've got people who moan and complain, or people who are fearful. Because actually that's what goes into your programming. That's your browser tabs that are open. That's your community. And it's not to say that you need to get rid of it, because you can't really get rid of family and stuff, and we don't want to. However, what I would say is it's about injecting more kind of grounded and positive elements in. Just because they're not familiar doesn't mean that they're not going to be good. And they say hope is harder, but it is more sustainable. It's very easy to be negative, and actually it feels functional. Like I say, I used to be an amazing problem spotter, and it's not really a great thing to be able to do. It feels helpful and it feels protective, but actually we tend to get drawn more to people who are solution spotters, and who are hope spotters. And they say if you're going through a ski run and someone says, don't hit the trees, don't hit the trees, you're more likely to hit a tree. Whereas actually what you should be saying to yourself is, look for the clear path, look for the clear path. And if you're looking for the clear path rather than the trees that you might hit, you're looking for a clear path, and you're more likely to get drawn to the clear path. But if you look for the trees, you're more likely to actually hit a tree,
Well, it's like the whole thing, it's like if I say, Clive, whatever you do right now, do not think of pink elephants. What are you thinking about? It's like, right. Well, it's like, some people might be like, why is he telling me not to think about pink elephants? All right, I get it. That might be the case. But it's like, if it's just, again, it's about awareness. It's like, if I had pink elephants was the furthest thing from my awareness, but you just brought it in. And now I may not be thinking directly of pink elephants, but I may be thinking, why in the hell is this guy telling me not to think about pink, or something. Point is that now pink elephants is at least on my mind a little bit.
But again, if we are, we think about truths, or are truths in that way, I think. And I always thought that I was addicted to nicotine, and I was using it in an addictive, habitual manner. And actually, when you break the spell on it, when you actually understand that you're choosing it and that you can choose not to, and I don't know, there's just something very special about disrupting the way that you think. If you can break the way you think, but you have to do it in a number of areas, because no thought is isolated fully by itself, I think. And what we're looking at is being able to do it with, the way we deal with, worrying about our interactions or our future. And we have so many thinking patterns that are so ingrained. We can shut down one or two of the viruses, some of the things that cause us problems, but it's when we shut down 5 or 6 of those things in combination that we tend to get a result. And I hadn't been able to crack the smoking thing for a long time. I hadn't been able to crack the habitual drinking thing for a long time. And it was addressing lots of different things in my life that I think made it then suddenly seem effortless. It was, starting running. It was starting to really chip away at the things that were bothering me. It was starting to repair relationships. It was starting to focus on what I valued inside of me, and finding the support to do it. And again, stuff like listening to good podcasts, taking in good quality information rather than just staring at a news feed on my phone that actually just filled me with fear and anxiety.
Yeah. And I think, and I don't want to get all conspiracy theorists here, but I do believe that is by design. I do believe that the masses, and I do mean the human collective, whatever, individual, the human collective, I do believe, are being kept in that low vibrational, that low dumbed down state on purpose, and I also believe that, like, if you can do this, go into any big group of people, and it seems as if the bigger the group, the dumber they are, really. I mean, they just don't make a lot of sense. But you can go into that group and pick out any individuals at random. It doesn't matter. Pull those individual people from that stupid group and talk to that person as an individual, and you realize they're actually pretty intelligent. But you have to separate them from the group and say, okay, I'm not worried about the vibe of that group. I'm talking about, this is you. What are your thoughts here? And it seems as if the more they talk as an individual, the more elevated they become. Does that make sense?
Well, I think, this is the thing. We're getting back to remembering who we are, and it's been programmed out of us to some extent. The media, Noam Chomsky is very well known for his theories on manufacture of consent, that the media can have people chanting, pro-Vietnam within a week, and it's true. And it's actually very beneficial. And then it becomes propaganda and, conspiracy that's going on. But we know it's going on. And this is the thing. I actually think, we are being continually gaslit. And that does kind of stop us from actually finding, remembering who we are. I think, like you say, when you separate people off, they're quite decent if they will keep talking. I mean, we've got this thing in England at the moment that people are painting St. George's crosses across roundabouts and saying all the immigrant boats should go home. And all the tabloid newspapers are saying, like, this has to stop, and this far right-wing person will stop it all and stuff. And I met a woman in Chesterfield, and I said, she actually said, it's a crazy world at the moment. And I agreed. And then I said, yeah, people painting red flags on roundabouts. And she goes, yes, I've ordered one for my house, a flag. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Do you not think that there might be slight racist connotations to the way they're being used at the moment? Because, they're matched with the English Defence League and they're being taken to the hotels where they're burning the hotels and going immigrants out, that actually you might be kind of fueling that a bit. And she said, you know what, we should stop talking because I can see that we've got very different ideas on that. And I said, no, that's exactly why we should be talking, because I could learn from you and you could learn from me. But she wasn't far enough from the group to have, or confident enough to have that conversation, and that's sad. The programming can run so deep that people just lock in and say, I'm not going to even think about alternatives to that. And I think that's when we do ourselves a real disfavor. Like, we should always be curious, we should always question, and we should always, when we meet someone who's got an opposing view to us, is to take an interest in it. I think, I am interested, and actually I would probably agree that she's got every right to be patriotic and to display it, but then I would have my concerns of whether that can be done in such a way that it's beneficial to the people who are viewing it, or whether it makes it worse. But again, these are the conversations that would be good for us to have as a community, as to have, I mean, at the moment in America, you've got all sorts of things going on that you voted for, apparently. And I do think it was turkeys voting for Christmas, because it seems to be the people who've lost the most are the people who voted that person in, which is crazy, and we're at war with those people because we're going, and they go, no, I need to defend this. And then we all get split up and divided. And then we go, oh, sod it, well, I'll just go and smoke and drink and do drugs, because we're not living in a nice place anymore. And like the Rat Park experiment shows very clearly, if we're not living in a nice, trusted, safe environment, we're more likely to turn to drugs. We're more likely to turn to addictive behaviors. And, that's why I do think negativity is being used, because addictive behaviors make a lot of money. You wouldn't have casinos, you wouldn't have the drink industry, you wouldn't have the drug industry, you wouldn't have half the medical industry wouldn't exist, because we'd all be living healthier lives. And that's not conspiracy, it's just fact. It's just fact.
Right. Well, another thing in America that it's a big one for me. I think that it's a big and again, it's all about the bringing things into people's awareness. But for example, and I'm not going to get political here or whatever, but I guess maybe a little bit. if I'm being honest. But like with regards to the pharmaceutical companies running ads on TV, for example, they'll come out with some new drug, they'll run ads on it during, commercials during TV, during baseball games or whatever. When it goes to commercial break, they'll have a commercial for some new drug that this pharmaceutical company has invented. And it's like, they'll be for conditions that I'm like, damn, I've never heard of that before. And now all of a sudden, people have this condition. And it's like, if that wasn't brought into the collective's awareness, would we have that condition at all or not? Now, I'm not saying there's no chance of it happening. But what I'm saying is they'll come out with this new drug that treats some condition. And it's like, that's a thing? Okay. And then say a month later, it's like this condition is widespread and everybody's got it. And it's like, when the hell did this happen? It's like it happened when it was brought into the awareness of the collective with this drug company pumping this ad out, trying to sell this medication. And now people are all going to their doctor saying, I've got that. I need this med. And I'm not leaving until you write me a prescription for it.
Well, it's interesting that you've got people at my age of 50, and some of them are on 8 to 10 pills, and some of them are on nothing. Yeah, that could be like a draw. It could be genetics. It could be probably lifestyle, diets, and a lot of things. Now, I'm not saying obviously there are conditions that just happen, and they're very unfortunate. But I think there's an awful lot that like if you look at something like diabetes and insulin, yes, you have got people who have diabetes, isn't diet induced. But if you looked at the percentage of people where diet is an issue, I mean, the way that we eat grain as was prescribed by the American food pyramid, and actually it was a lie, because actually eating grain breaks down to the carbohydrates, to the sugars, produces insulin spikes, and does cause diabetes. Huge. If you eat a huge grain heavy diet, it's not good for you. And again, as we were talking about in one of the previous podcasts, I've now started this fasting for change, and I don't eat till 12 o'clock in the day now. Like, I don't even have milk in my coffee when I wake up. So I do not break my fast until midday. And I would have just shoved a few bits of toast down my gob at breakfast time, thinking I should eat something. Whereas now,
because they tell us that breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Yeah, eat your
and I believe
breakfast.
that until recently. I believe that until very recently, Clive.
Well, now I believe it's probably one of the worst meals of the day for me. Maybe not for other people. Maybe other people need it, but for me, getting to 12 o'clock and being hungry and having had a 16-hour fast where maybe my body's gone into ketosis, maybe even autophagy with digesting the bad cells. It's gone into fat burning mode as well. So I'm losing a little bit of weight and a little bit healthier. But the main thing it's done is up in my mind. It's made me more conscious of what I break that fast with. When I break the fast at 8 o'clock in the morning with a cup of coffee with milk in it, I then go on to eating toast and this, that, and the other. And then by lunchtime, I'll have a late lunch because I'm not particularly hungry. And I think, well, I ought to eat something. And then I shove like a pasty down my throat or something. And it would have been actually cups of coffee and cigarettes before that, Whereas now I get to lunchtime and I think, well, what do I break the fast with? I've done really well. I've done 16 hours without eating. I'm going to have something healthy. And then I have a satsuma and a banana and some nuts and some olives and some cheese and some, and it's been revolutionary. I've been doing that for 2 weeks now, and I've lost a couple of kilos. I feel mentally much sharper. I'm looking better, I think, as well. I think I'm genuinely looking younger. But it's not just that. I feel better in my headspace. So again, Fasting for Change, that's the new website that I'm doing, fastingforchange.org. If anyone wants to go and have a look at that, it's free, because I believe that change is free. We can get some of the best changes in our life for free. We don't have to join coaching programs, but again, do it sensibly. If you're going to embark on stuff, do your research, get curious, questions. If someone tells you something's good, Go and look it up. Go and do your research, cross-reference it a few times, and get excited about possibilities. You know, here I am telling you that I think fasting could change a lot of people's lives. And you could be there getting really excited about hearing that and thinking, I might try that, you know. It's free.
Right.
In fact, it's cheaper than free. It's actually cheaper than doing what I want to do. You know, I've given up habitual drinking, I've given up smoking, and I'm eating healthier and I'm eating at the right times for me. So, yeah, everything's a winner in my books.
And you're also, I've noticed, because as we were talking earlier, before we recorded, you are also eating foods that are much easier for your body to digest. So your body is not having to expend so much energy to digest food that is really of no nutritional value. So all your energy is being funneled towards just digesting food that, and then it's like, well, what do you get from it? Nothing. You just lost a bunch of energy and you got nothing for it, you know? So now it's something that's a lot easier for your body to digest. So therefore it doesn't have to expend so much energy for it. And you're getting more nutrition from it. So it's like, it's a double whammy. You're saving some energy that you can then use for other things, and you're getting nutrition.
I'm getting a lot more variety. So I'm getting a lot more micronutrients. I know that much. One thing I'm getting less of, I would say at the moment, is protein. Protein I need to stack up on a little bit because I'm doing weights as well to boost testosterone levels. I've got low testosterone at the moment, and weights is one thing that actually increases that. But the micronutrients are there. So protein, I'm looking at boosting a bit. But again, it's up to everyone. We've been given this amazing meat bucket, as Dom puts it, you know. But it's one of the most sophisticated machines on this planet. You know, it's an amazing machine that we've got, and we take it for granted a lot, and we fuel it very badly, both mentally and nutritionally, you know. And yes, some people go, well, I can't afford to do that. You know, I can't afford to eat, you know, an organic avocados or whatever. And, you know, maybe the world can't actually sustain giving everyone organic avocados. It's just not possible. But I would say that for me, swapping from drinking a box of wine 4 times a week, which is £20 a pop, enables me to make better food choices. So I get the bonus of not drinking, which some people would not see as a bonus because they see it as a medicine, a self-medication. I've never seen booze as a self-medication. It's just something that I've enjoyed doing and found hard to stop. So again, if it's being seen as a self-medication, you need to then get curious of what it's medicating and how it's doing it and why it's doing it and what could take its place, I think. You know, and again, it's different for class A drugs like heroin because they've got that really high physically addictive component and also the social component because you're with a group of people doing that who might feel like a family, you know, kind of fairly dysfunctional, but a safe, unsafe family, you know, and it becomes what you're used to. But is that what you want? And if not, how do you make small shifts? You can't always change things overnight, but even by going, well, I'm going to read 10 pages of a book each day. I'm going to listen to a podcast every day. I'm going to try and make friends with someone who's not involved in that scene. I'm going to, you know, seek out possibilities. So rather than being fixated on the fear and the problems, which I say I've been guilty of a lot of my life, is to actually go, right, I'm going to break that habit. I'm going to break that spell. I'm going to say this ends here. I have awareness that I do that. And I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to acknowledge it and I'm going to change it. I'm going to decide that there is a point in changing that. And I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. Well, the thing, like, for example, with heroin or just any opioids for that matter, is that kind of becomes your family. I mean, you know, and I know it sounds weird, but that's your, you know, it's like Nikki Sixx. And if you ever read the Heroin Diaries or whatever, he says it's his warm blanket. You know, it's like, it doesn't matter what's going on. I can escape and I can put on my warm, fuzzy blanket and everything's good now. And that's kind of how heroin is. And that's the problem with it is that it's obviously it's it's very physically addictive. And yes, you're going to go through some serious freaking physical withdrawal symptoms, but it's also very mentally and emotionally, and in my opinion, spiritually addictive too, because it's like, damn, that's all I need, So it's so hard to pull away from, and it's so hard to say, well, okay, if I do pull away from that, then what have I got? It's like, what do I turn to then? And that's why it's so hard, and that's why people don't want to face it. And really, and, like I said with the drug test, they don't want to see that on the drug test, because that's when they have to look at it and they see their name and they see the drug and they see that it's positive, and they're like, damn, I'm really doing that. I'm testing positive for heroin. And it's like, well, no shit, you're testing positive for heroin. You've been using it for 10 years. Why wouldn't you? Right. But it's like bringing that to your awareness, and now I have to face it. And that's tough. And anyway, that's all. I know we need to probably wrap this up. But yes, and by the way, dear loved ones, yes, if you have not checked out Clive's, Clive he's always got stuff going on, but his newest project, which is the fastingforchange.org, that is a fantastic, thing that he's doing there. And no, it does not cost you anything. In fact, it'll probably save you some money, because you won't be buying food. So
it'll save you on healthcare as well. And
yes, absolutely.
But again, consult with a medical professional if you're going to go into fasting and you don't know enough about it. Then make sure that you know what you're doing. It's important, But again, just bringing that awareness to yourself and actually starting to treat. I think life should be a bit of an experiment. We should be a little bit more explorative, people who just go, you see people who get to the end of their life and they've done the same thing every day. I know in the last 3 weeks, I've been to 3 amazing weekends full of amazing people. And it feels like it's been half a year since that first party that I went to 3 weeks ago, because I've done so much stuff in 3 weeks. And it's stretched time out. It's changed my view on things. And again, the people that you meet, the mental diet that you consume, what you consume. If you just sit there binging serial killers on Netflix, you're going to have a certain outlook on the life, But if you start creating stuff, if you start making stuff, if you start connecting stuff up, I think it changes stuff. What you focus on grows. If you focus on good stuff, you grow it. If you focus on the weeds, then you're always fighting the weeds. And that's no way to live. We've got to start being grateful for the good bits and really starting to magnify those. And that's how kind of manifestation works. It's just a lot of people charge you £1,000 a pop for doing it.
Right.
Because they're manifesting a lot of money out of manifestation.
Yeah. Well, I've actually heard that put that way, is that it says that the only people who are really manifesting wealth are the people who are teaching manifestation techniques. And it's like, damn, he's kind of right. But anyway, yeah, I guess let's wrap it up. And I really appreciate you co-hosting these episodes with me. It's been good. I like I said before at the beginning, I don't really want it to be more like an interview. It's more just a discussion.
This is it. I think good quality conversation is really important. It helps both people. It helps the person who's expressing it, helps the person receiving it, hopefully, and then vice versa, the other way around. So it's a symbiotic and a good exchange. And actually, we should be creating more opportunities for that in our lives, because it's free, it's a good, healthy thing to do, and it's what we should be doing. And when we go to a really good, kind of like group or a festival or, a social occasion, we have those conversations and it feels amazing. We feel alive, but we can have that experience every day. Like I do have that experience when I listen to podcasts, when I listen to good quality stuff, when I then talk about it and I think about it and I have that conversation with myself if no one's around. So,
Well, it's like right now, okay, this is the second week of September in 2025 right now. And somebody may listen to this podcast next week. They may not listen to it till next year. It's going to be online, and it might touch somebody 2-3 years from now. That's the beautiful thing about stuff like this, is it's out there in the field now, and if somebody needs to hear this, if it's going to resonate with somebody, but it may not resonate with them right now, it's going to be there for them. I think that's the great thing about having these conversations and putting it out there so that people can find it. It's like I look through the stats and I see people who have listened to some of my very early podcasts, the ones that make me cringe because I'm like, oh God, those are bad. Those are really bad, and I'm like, why would you listen to that? And then I notice, I'm like, well, okay, so somebody listened to the, like yesterday, the stats can get pretty specific if you want to. It's like, okay, so yesterday somebody listened to episodes 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah.
When I was really bad, but apparently they liked it because they kind of listened to, they continued to, and it's like, I don't need to worry about that. I mean, as I've heard, you got to be the disaster before you can be the master anyway. So, okay, I was a disaster then. I'm certainly no master now, but I feel like I've gotten better anyway. But anyway, it's like, hey, if that resonates with somebody, then that's worth it to leave it out there, even though it makes me cringe. I'm just not going to listen to it personally. But if somebody finds that, resonates with it, and thinks, damn, that's exactly what I needed to hear today, that's great.
And can we just say as well that if people want to get in touch, if the podcasts do make a difference, or if you've found stuff that's inspiring you in your life, please do use Matt's website, mysoberaddiction.com. You can use the contact form there, send a message. And if you want to be on the podcast, I think you're up for taking more podcast guests, aren't you, Matt? So,
Oh, yeah.
And I think appearing on podcasts is a great thing to do. It's a really good thing. And, if you really don't like it, we won't publish it. But if you've got an interesting story to tell that you think will inspire others and also will inspire you sharing it, get involved. Go to mysoberaddiction.com and go and get on the contact form and get in touch because we'd love to hear from you.
Definitely. We certainly would. All right, dear loved ones. Clive, you got any? I guess that was your final word, wasn't it?
That's pretty much. I've always got more words.
That's good. That's good. That's my final word. I appreciate you, Clive, of course. And dear loved ones, we do love you. And we'll be back directly.
There is a distance in the light.